Welcome to the Child Welfare Choice. Thank you for considering a position in this difficult and rewarding field.
To put it very simply, the main mission of child welfare is to provide safety, permanency, and well-being for children. The job can be rewarding, complex, stressful, and sometimes a bit frightening.
It's very important that you understand what the job entails before you accept this type of position. We want you to realize just what you are getting into before you proceed any further in the hiring process.
We want to make sure that the job you are seeking is a good fit for your skills and your personality. We hope this video helps you in making this decision.
Caseworkers are vital to the teamwork that everybody puts into this system, from the guardian ad litems to respondent counsel to the providers that provide services to the families. And the caseworkers many times are my eyes and ears to the family. And many times, along with the GAL, they'll be the voice for that child in the courtroom, talking to me about decisions that are in the best interest of this child.
As a child welfare worker, we rescue families for children, not children from families. Our job is to give families the resources and support that they need in order to be successful, to be reunified with their children.
I mean, you can't fix everybody. You're not going to be able to go out there as a miracle worker. You can do so much, but the reward is you're keeping a child safe and you're keeping them in their home.
In taking this job initially, I had very unrealistic expectations. Being out of school myself, going in and just wanting to work with families, I thought, okay, I'm going to change these families. You know, I'm going to make these parents, you know, behave right, you know, and take care of their kids. Well, you can't change them. You cannot change a mother or father. You can only provide those services in order to assist them to affect change in their lives.
There are going to be things that shock you, that appall you, that make you cry sometimes, but at the same time, a job is very rewarding.
When you originally get an intake case, your biggest concern is kind of what are the needs here, and how can I move this on to the ongoing worker so that they can continue to supervise this family and get them what they need. You have much more of a kind of a short-term perspective of what's going to be best for the family, whereas an ongoing worker, you definitely have to take everything into consideration and look more at as a big picture, kind of what we need to address to aid the family long term.
A good intake worker would be open-minded, non-judgmental. They'd be very honest with families. They'd have good organizational skills, time management skills. They'd be motivated, and I think kind of overall they'd be willing to learn.
Some of the most imperative skills that an ongoing worker must have would be, first and foremost, a willingness to be flexible. You can come in having your day planned out, and depending upon if a crisis happens or if there's an emergency, your day will completely change. So having the flexibility to kind of roll with the punches, so to speak, and be willing to work late nights or come in early to make up for time lost, I think is a crucial piece of this job. And really being willing to do that and understanding that your job is not 40 hours a week, and that many times you're working late at night or early in the morning. It doesn't typically look like a Monday through Friday 9-to-5 job, certainly.
You have to just learn how to manage what needs to get done and prioritize that day and what can wait for the following day or the next day. It's very important to be able to be flexible because you never know what you're walking into. Every day is different.
When we deal with families and these types of concerns, it's natural for the parents to get really emotional and a lot of times very angry and hostile. It's been pretty frequent that I've been yelled at, called names, had my job threatened, and that's, you know, a pretty normal thing for us to deal with almost on a daily basis.
The majority of the clients you're meeting are people that need support, don't have a lot of resources, and there are some bad things that could be happening and going on, and you never know, again, what you're walking into. You have to be a good communicator. You're interviewing and going to strange people and asking them all about their lives. They're not happy to see you. They're not giving you muffins when you show up. So I had a mom one time, I was going out to place her child and remove him from the home, and she is running up to the vehicle, pounding on the windows. It's very scary, you know, people could be coming at you, you can have the door slammed in your face. So you have to constantly be on your feet and thinking fast and how to react in certain situations.
I've learned through the years to rely on addressing people's concerns up front and trying to de-escalate them and confronting what their fears are right up front. I've found through experience that if I do that, then things tend to work out and I can get people to calm down and be able to work effectively with me.
If there's a situation where I'm going to a house and I don't know what I'm going to encounter, I have the option to call for a police officer to assist me at the residence, just to stand by. Unfortunately, you can see some pretty awful things working here. You can see children with severe injuries, broken bones. The hardest for me are babies, shaken babies. Sometimes you see child fatalities. You can see neglect, starvation, unsanitary living conditions.
This home was just like nothing I'd ever seen. It was an apartment, and there were literally infestations of spiders and roaches along the walls and the cracks of the wall. There was not any floor space to walk. And I remember looking down and thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't know where to step. Was something going to crawl in between my toes? The kitchen, tons, just stacks of dishes with food that appeared molded and had been there weeks and weeks on end. The bathroom, I don't think you want me to get specific on the bathroom. I thought I was going to vomit. And it was a 1.5-year-old living in this environment. And I was crushed.
I think over time that I've developed some pretty tough skin because of the things I've seen, and in order for me to really be effective in helping families, you have to take the personal side out of it.
You know, I think I became a better caseworker when I had kids because I could understand how parents got into the positions that they've gotten themselves into. But by the same token, when you have kids of the same age that you're dealing with, it becomes you become very distraught and you question yourself repeatedly about, are you making the right decisions, and what would it be like if somebody took my children from me?
I remember one of the last things that happened after coming out of intake into my new position, dealing with the very difficult baby cases, as we call them, the infants, and having an infant myself, and going home and bawling and crying, and your husband's kind of looking at you like, what's wrong with you? And as supportive as he wants to be, it's difficult, and it does make an impact. You want to go home and hug your kids and live in a bubble.
Social services in itself is secondary trauma. You're hearing very, very horrible cases that happen to children, and it takes a toll on a person. So we have built, our own support. If we need a timeout, we would be able to talk to somebody and just vent, try to minimize that secondary trauma. So working as a team is very important. You have to be 110% a team player in order to get through this day.
With ongoing child protection, I think a lot of people have this belief that all day long I spend my days with children and with families. And though that is what I do, a lot of the time, the bulk, I'd say probably 60 to 70% of my time is spent coordinating with other professionals to implement services so that we can get children back home with their parents, or we can maintain reunification. I am obligated by state law to go out and see children face-to-face each month, so I see every child on my caseload at least once a month, and then I work with families on an average of about once a week where I'm actually having face-to-face contact with the parents. But ongoing child protection, especially working with children 0 to 12 like I do, I work more with the parents than I do necessarily with the small children.
On a daily basis, I am checking messages, I'm returning phone calls, I'm communicating with my parents, staying in touch with different treatment providers. I am preparing and writing court reports. I am filing Most importantly, I am documenting, and more documenting.
Paperwork is one of the largest elements in child welfare. If it's not documented, basically it didn't happen.
Well, one thing that I always want to try to remind people is, if the information isn't in the case report, I don't know about it, because that's all I get to read prior to going out and making these decisions to terminate, to reunify, to place a child with a grandparent or a relative or long-term foster care, whatever it may be. And their documentation is critical to all the decisions that I make. It's the 100% basis of what I know when I walk out on the bench.
I think actually testifying is one of those things that even good caseworkers find challenging. The reality is there's going to be a period of time when you're on the job where you're going to be sitting up there, you've been sworn in, and there's going to be an attorney who's paid to make you look bad, and they're going to, and you're going to answer questions even though you did your job the way you knew you were supposed to. The reality is you're going to have to say, yes, I did that, yes, I didn't do that. And you're occasionally going to say to myself, wow, that makes me look bad, even though you might have done a good job.
As a caseworker, I have a chance to work with different families. Some of them have much more serious issues going on than others. There are times when parents that you're working with are very severely involved in drug abuse or alcohol abuse, and it can be sometimes nearly impossible just to have a normal conversation with them.
Child welfare came into my life because I have an addiction to methamphetamine. At the time, I didn't think it was affecting my children. I thought I was being an effective parent, and that's all part of the addiction and the drug. However, I was not being an effective parent. I was under the influence. I would leave. I didn't even realize some of the things that I did to my children until after the case was even over, when they would tell me, Mom, we want to go to the store with you, because when you say you're going to the store, you don't come back for a day. My caseworker was younger than me, and that made me feel awkward and uncomfortable, because I would look at her thinking, how could you possibly think that you can manage my life and help me get my life in order when you haven't even begun your life?
Ongoing child protection work will give you the opportunity to work with both adolescents and with small children. However, there is a pretty significant difference between those two populations of children.
It's a good thing that people have a niche. There's some people that love working with younger kids, and there's some people that love working with teenagers, which is good.
I love working with teenagers. Adolescents are challenging, but they can be successful. Many of them graduate from high school, go on to college. Some even get adopted as teenagers.
One thing you must always remember with teenagers, if they don't trust you, you're not going to get anything from them. And that's where the communication comes in. Because if you can communicate with them, then that draws them, and you can develop that rapport with them and get that relationship. Also, what is key with teenagers, as well as with any clients, being consistent as far as visiting them, being there for them, monitoring them. If they call you on the phone, don't wait 24 hours to call them back, because you don't know what's going on. They can be thinking about running away. They could be thinking about hurting themselves, putting themselves in harm's way. You have to monitor. You have to do appropriate case management. You have to be there for them. Even though they're teenagers, sometimes you have to be there more for them than for the little ones.
On the other hand, working with small children, you're predominantly focused on maintaining their immediate basic needs for safety and to decrease any kind of risk concern that the department may have at the time.
There are times when removals are necessary because a child's safety is at risk. So those are big decisions, and they're not to be made lightly. So we do rely on the help of our supervisors to help make that call.
I meet with each worker at least one time a week for an hour to 2 hours to go over their cases. It's really important so that they know that I'm aware of what's going on in their cases, and that I can give them direction around something different that maybe needs to be done, but also reflect back on some positive things that they have done as well.
The relationship between a worker and their supervisor is very, very important. And I think without that, you don't get the bonding, and you're probably not going to get the job done effectively.
They also know that we have support throughout the agency around making decisions and getting extra services in for a family if need be. So it is an agency-wide support system. It's not just a supervisor, and it's definitely not just the worker out in the field on their own.
So Mom, what do you need from us to be successful?
We make decisions with families. We involve the family as much as possible. We have a process called team decision-making meetings, and the purpose for those are for the family to bring any and everyone that they feel that is a support for them. It can be cousins, brothers, uncles, the pastor, the neighbors. And so we try to empower the family to be in the decision-making process as much as we are, so that we can come out with a successful outcome.
I was assigned a case with 2 children that was brought to our attention for reasons of substance abuse, domestic violence, things of that nature. I worked with this family for 2 years. We had even thought that we would be potentially terminating because there was such little change happening in the case. And last month I was able to successfully close that case with the children reunified with their parents, both parents working and clean for over a year. So that was by far one of the most positive experiences that I've had, because I was able to see the family work so incredibly hard and know that this process and that this treatment plan that we came up with them really did work, and that change can happen.
Out in Sterling, we don't have as many resources as there are in Denver or in the metro area. One of the things we have to do quite a bit is have families travel to Denver, Fort Collins, or Greeley to access resources when we don't have as many placement options for children. So we have to place children as far away as Pueblo, which is a good 4-hour drive.
I spend a lot of time in my car. This is my county car, and I have had it for 2.5 years, and I now have 62,000 miles on it. So I'm in my car a lot.
One of the things that I went into this position for is I really wanted to work with children and be around children, and while I do that, at the same time I'm working with adults quite a bit. You do have to spend a lot of time traveling. You might have to transport a child from a city about an hour away and bring them back to Logan County to visit with their parents, and so for a 1-hour visit you could spend 4 hours in a vehicle.
We meet clients all the time off work hours. We meet them at Walmart, at the restaurants. They're our neighbors. Our kids go to school with clients' kids. We just encounter our clients in our everyday lives, and people know each other. It's a difficult situation not to involve work with private lives.
I enjoy being in a smaller county because I think you do get a chance to get to know families better, because you do end up going out on a referral on the same family more than once. You also get many opportunities to learn different things. I've been in intake, but I've held cases, ongoing cases, for an amount of time. I was trained to do adoption and foster care home studies. So I've had a lot of opportunities to do different things that I'm not sure I would have had those opportunities to learn such a variety of child welfare in a larger agency.
Child welfare in families' recovery is measured by their ability to make their own choices and see that they do have the skills and the abilities to rear their children and to get on their feet.
I think that one of the biggest challenges working in this field is working in the multicultural environment. You work with people from different countries, from different cultures, from different races, even working with families that don't speak the same language as you, and that's a challenge.
When you ask the question, what prepares somebody for this position, I don't know if anything can truly prepare you, and you really need to think about can I remove a child? When that child is crying, when that parent is crying, but you have to remove that child for safety, and certainly that would be the highest level of intervention. Can you do that?
I guess I wake up in the morning and I just say, it's another day. And I have another family that I know that I can help. And yes, it might be difficult, but that's my job. And you know, you don't do my type of work for money. You have to have a love for people. You have to have a caring. You have to want them to have a better life.
Making the decision to become a child welfare caseworker is an incredibly important decision. It's important to you and your job satisfaction. It's important to a child's life. It is one that you need to make with your eyes open. You're talking about decisions that are made about whether you terminate someone's parental rights, whether you return a child to the home of someone who's had drug addiction, who's had mental health issues, and have they reached a point where they can be safe. It's incredibly, it's an ominous decision to make, and the caseworkers in large part drive those decisions. When a caseworker comes in and they decide in the middle of a case that they're going to leave, it very much is like putting the car in neutral for a while. Cases stall out. And what I prefer to think of a case, it's 30 days to an adult is not that big a deal. But when you're talking about 30 days to a 2-month-old, that's half of his life. And all of a sudden, a child is in limbo for 30 days or half of his life until another caseworker picks up a case and gets started. It really stalls it out. It puts the case in neutral. It delays permanency. And I guess I would tell people, if you're not ready, it can be incredibly frustrating and destructive in your own life. If you're ready and you're prepared and you're willing to commit to children, it can be the most job-satisfying thing I think anybody can ever do.